Hey, what's up? I'm Mitch Orr.
And I'm Palisa Anderson, and we're here today cooking with Taste Dining at Home, presented by Diners Club.
Welcome to another installment of Taste Dining at Home, presented by Diners Club. I am your host for the series, Alice Zaslavsky, otherwise known as Alice in Frames. And I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm coming to you from, the Boon Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, for today's session, we have got two fantastic chefs from New South Wales, and they're not just chefs, I should say. We've got a chef and a chef/producer, and we speak a lot about produce on this series. So we are so fortunate to have Palisa Anderson from Chat Thai, from Boonlak Farm, I should say. And Palisa, I'm going to read your bio because you do so many things that I don't want to miss a thing. So I hope you don't mind. But Palisa Anderson is a second-generation restaurateur of Chat Thai, Boon Cafe, Jeren, Chai Asian Grocers, Assam and Samasan, and a first-generation farmer of Boonlak Farm. She's a columnist for The Guardian and soon-to-be SBS Food TV star. So we're looking forward to chatting a little bit more and getting a sneak peek of what we can expect on your new show, Palisa. Welcome, and I can't wait to chat Panna Cotta with you as well. Now, our second guest, our chef for today's conversation, is Mitch Orr. Now, Mitch grew up in the western suburbs of Sydney, and he knew from a very young age that he wanted to be a chef. And in fact, he was the recipient as a young chef of the Josephine Pignolet Award. And as part of that award, he spent some time at Osteria Francescana in Modena, which actually inspired a love, I suppose, of Italian food, which he continued in Australia with Giovanni Pilu, which some of you might know from Pilu at Freshwater. And Mitch opened a restaurant that you might have heard of called Acme, which won all of the awards. And since closing Acme, Mitch has spent some fantastic time with being a dad, I suppose, and living his best life. So we can chat a little bit more about that and chat EXO as well. So welcome to both of you. Yay, thank you for coming. We're very, very glad to have you. And I suppose we like to start off by talking about the dishes that you've chosen to cook for the series. So let's start with you, Palisa. You chose, let's go sweet before savoury. You chose a guava granita panna cotta. What inspired this dish for you?
Well, I just took a look around to see what was available. And we have just been plummeted, no kidding, with guavas. So it just seemed fitting to, if anything dessert-wise, to do a guava-based dessert. And the cream actually for the panna cotta came from our good friends Deb Allard, just up the road from us here. It's just delicious.
Beautiful. And that makes such a difference, doesn't it? Because it's such a simple combination of flavors, but the actual produce that you choose makes all of that difference to the flavor, right?
Oh, absolutely. And actually the vanilla pods in the panna cotta also came from my next door neighbor. So it is, it's very much a Northern Rivers dessert.
I love it. You foraged it from all around the neighborhood.
You actually had to John actually had to hand pollinate each vanilla bean flower.
Wow. Yeah.
Because there's no wasp to do that around here. There's no native wasp to do that. But what I love about this combination is it's really fresh. And, when Mitch and I came to talk about what to cook, it was, again, I said we wanted to do something vegetarian, and Mitch suggested, Mitch is the king of EXO. So I thought something, cold and refreshing would be good.
And I noticed with the guava granita, you didn't even need to scrape it or anything. It's just the one freeze, and then it's got that gorgeous texture. Is that the nature of that fruit?
Yeah. So basically, it's quite dry. It's not an ice. It's not a what's the word? It's not a very kind of, it's not a fruit that's high in water content. And so it's very easily emulsifiable. It's very much banana in a way. A lot of tropical fruits. They actually, and the other thing is we don't irrigate our fruit trees here at all. So they don't contain crazy amounts of water. They're not watery. And by mixing the honey in rather than straight up sugar, if you're making a sorbet or a granita, it really helps to actually just keep it smooth. So, the consistency of the granita is very much more like a sorbet than a granita, because it doesn't freeze at, a super high temperature. It stays stable. So when you come to scoop, or when you come to kind of scrape it, even if you've just had it in the refrigerator for no matter how long you've had it, it will still come out that kind of creamy consistency.
Beautiful. Well, that looks like something that people can definitely make at home, and you can access both of the recipes online. So definitely check that out. Now, King of Exo, Mitch Orr, is that a title that you were expecting to?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Add that to your Josephine Pignollet award. What is the key to a really great Exo sauce?
Like most other things, it's time. Time and patience. Yeah.
How long are we talking?
A couple of hours. You have to let the flavors develop and everything cook down and come together, and you can't rush that process, unfortunately. But the good thing is you put it on the stove and you just pay it a little bit of attention, and you can still go about doing other things while it's on there.
And for those people at home that haven't ever tasted Exo sauce, or perhaps have never tried to make their own, what is the flavor? Tell us about the flavor profile.
Well, traditionally, Exo is based on dried shrimp and dried scallops, so it's seen as a real premium sauce. And then it's garlic, chili, sometimes ginger. But for our one, we swapped out the prawns and the scallops and used mushrooms. So it's really full of umami. It's really deep in flavor, a little bit of spice, obviously, because there's chili, but it's really well-rounded. And, especially using dry shiitake, fresh shiitake, and other mushrooms, it's really full of umami. I
love it. And speaking of umami, you used eggplant in the noodles. Was that eggplant from Boonluck Farm by any chance?
It was. What breed are they, Palisa? Some special?
It was Mitoyo. It was a Japanese variety, and it was an egg shape, kind of beautiful round, but very much unlike like a Lebanese eggplant or anything, because it was just super silky. Hey, Mitch, like hardly any seeds.
Yeah, not very at all. Really luscious texture.
And if we can't access that variety, because obviously the thing about your produce, Palisa, I see it on every chef's Instagram in New South Wales. Everyone loves your produce. But for those people at home, can they access your stuff, or is it kind of more that they need to seek out maybe graffiti eggplant?
Just send me a DM. Market? Seriously. A lot of people just send me DMs, and I just, I send them a box. It's a very easy exchange.
Gosh, I wish I was not in Victoria right now, because I would love to try that box. Every time I see it, I'm just like, oh my God. Don't we ever? We're very, very lucky. Do you have favourite Victorian growers and farm gates, Palisa?
Well, I was actually, this time last year, I was down your way, and what's the one that the organic grower down there that everyone? Well, I love
Mossy Willow.
Yeah, Mossy Willow is beautiful. Yeah. But Mary Lucas has some really fun stuff as well. That's Anthea's mum, and her little farm. I think she sells a lot to Petite Tractor and Adam down there. Yeah. So the food at Petite is fantastic, because her produce is really beautiful. Yeah.
And that's the thing, isn't it? And I think that's what we keep coming back to in this series, is that for chefs and for foodies, produce is the place where you can start, and you don't really need to do much to the food to make it taste really, really good.
I don't know. I think you need a little bit of skill, especially coming from where Mitch has been showing us. You definitely need the skill to make it sing. But no, you're right. Like, if you start off with good produce, it doesn't require like crazy amounts of. You don't want to change it too much. I think that's the thing. You just want to highlight
true.
Cooking's easy. I don't know why everyone pretends like it's hard. It's really easy. You get good produce, don't do much to it. That's it.
Yeah, and I think that if there's one thing that this whole time of being at home has taught us, it's that cooking is actually really fun. I think there are more people cooking now than ever before. So for people that are just starting out, we get lots of people watching that are just starting out cooking in the kitchen. Is there a dish perhaps, Mitch, that you started cooking when you realised that you wanted to follow your foodie dream, that you would recommend people start with?
No, that's such a long time ago. I think I started getting an interest in cooking when I was sort of in high school and Jamie Oliver was fresh on TV and that kind of thing. I remember I used to just like marinate steaks in weird things and serve it with pasta, and I didn't know what I was doing, but it is the fun thing of I grew up in an Anglo-Saxon household with meat and 3 veg, and both my parents hated cooking. So for me, it was, what can I do that's going to be different to the same thing my mum's going to cook every night? And she was like, if I don't have to cook, you can do whatever you want, So that's sort of where it stemmed from. And then I fell into cooking Italian food. In a way, that's sort of the path my career took. But I love eating Asian food, be it Thai or Vietnamese or Japanese or regional Chinese, or so that flavor palette profiles and what I love to eat and where my career has gone sort of merge into what I cook now.
And Mitch mentioned that his mum hated cooking and food wasn't really a big part of the household, but Palisa, that couldn't be more different, I suppose, from your childhood.
Yeah, so I went the extreme and I went completely the other way, and that I actually want to just cook all the Anglo-Saxon food. I remember asking my mum to freaking make mashed potatoes because I'd come home from one of my friends' houses, and I remember a birthday party, she'd be like, making her prawns on toast, like the prawn mousseline on toast. I'm like, no, I just want microwavable or oven kind of sausage rolls and little Big Ben pies, please. And she was just rolled her eyes at me. I do remember. And then I remember actually being at the age where my daughter is now, and having to do homework so that I couldn't go to the restaurant every evening to help her anymore. And I remember doing after school activities, and I'd walk over to the petrol station and just to the food section, the fresh food section there, and buy chicken fillets. And for some reason I'd make chicken and mango salad or some shit like that. It was atrocious. It was atrocious. And I think I remember going in the beginning, I was just like, I loved cooking so much, but I just wanted to cook anything but what I was eating every day, which was a lot of Thai food, I guess, what my mum was cooking. And I remember serving out for my mum, being super proud that I was doing something different. And I remember her saying, "Oh, this is really wonderful. It tastes just like airplane food."
I love that. That's so great.
It's funny because I grew up across the road. I grew up in a little cul-de-sac in the western suburbs of Sydney and grew up across the road from a Filipino family. And I'd be over their house every day going, "What's in your fridge? Like, is there a adobo today? Is there kari kari? Is there sinigang? What can I try today?" And they would be saying to Mum, "Can we just have spaghetti bolognese?" And they would want the Western food that I thought was so terrible, and I would want to be eating all the Filipino food that I thought was incredible, So that dichotomy is pretty funny.
That just goes to show. That just goes to show. We all feel, like we want to belong, and yet none of us actually think we belong.
Yeah, it's a really natural process, isn't it? I think, especially in our teenage years of trying to find those moments of belonging. I remember, really wanting to bring sandwiches to school, even though, coming to Australia, that was not a thing that we were doing, from the former Soviet Union, and people saying, "Why don't you have sandwiches?" And I would say, "Oh, that's because I'm allergic to bread." And then one day I really wanted to try a sandwich, and they said, "I thought you were allergic to bread." "Only square bread." It was a triangular sandwich. Whatever we need to get us there, right? So are your kids the same, Palisa? Do they cook much, or are they just happy to eat your food?
No, both my kids love to cook. Actually, my daughter's been making some really interesting stuff. Actually, they love to watch food TV as well. So so this is where you have to step in, Mitch, and actually make sure that food TV is really accurate.
You're the one who uses those, not me.
But we went recently to Pipit. And we were served this beautiful guava dish, which, of course, the guavas, they came from our farm, and we came home. My daughter the next day, of course, tried to recreate that dish as if she was on MasterChef.
I love
and she did
that.
a really good job. She did a really good job.
That's the thing. Well, that goes back to the point, if you're using that good produce, you don't need to kind of have the skill. You can kind of fake your way through it. I love that. So both of you, it sounds like, are dabbling in some food TV. So Mitch, what have you been consulting on? Can you tell us a little bit about that, or is that all top secret at the moment?
No, nothing really. I just consulted on a couple of advertisements and just some other little things like this and bits and pieces. I did something for Sony Music not too long ago, but they were just little bits and pieces that I've had time to do, I guess, and been lucky enough to do now that I'm not working full time in the kitchen. So yeah, it's just
Thank God. Hopefully it will look, like when you see an ad on TV, it'll actually look like something real.
hopefully. And
has this time
I'm happy to do more of it if it's out there.
Well, and so has this time kind of reframed what it is that you think you can contribute to the food industry, or do you see yourself going back into restaurants one day?
I definitely want to go back into restaurants. That's still where the passion and, I think my talent really is. I don't know if my talent is actually outside of the restaurant, but it's just such a unique and different time that it's, we're sort of forced to take time to reset. And especially after closing Acme, where I'd had Acme for 5 years, and that was owning a restaurant was always the end goal of my career when I was young. That's always the thing that I looked towards. And now that I've done that and come out the other side of it, and now I'm like, well, what do I do? What's left? So having the time to sort of be able to think about that and process Acme's closing and move on from it and be able to deal with that without the pressure of running another kitchen and all that kind of stuff has been a blessing. And being able to take opportunities to do other bits and pieces and stuff like that is always really, really cool to do. But I definitely want to be back in the kitchen cooking, as I'm sure most other chefs around the country do as well.
You mentioned processing closing Acme, because it is a grieving process, isn't it, when a chapter of your life closes? Yeah. Did you have a moment of clarity?
I think when I was at peace with it when we closed, we'd made a decision over a long period of time and that kind of thing, but I jumped into something else straight away because I kind of had to. But now, like I didn't have that realization of that owning Acme was the whole goal of my career, and I achieved that goal. And now that I've done that, I never saw anything past that. So that's now that I've realized that. Now the next step is okay. What the hell do I actually want to do now, and what fits for me, and what's actually going to work for me moving forward? So that's sort of the next step, and being able to do these little bits and pieces and try different things and sort of explore what I'm good at and how that can translate into making a living outside of a kitchen in the traditional sense has been pretty interesting. So.
Yeah, that's cool. As you say, you've kind of achieved the thing that you want to. So there's a liberty in that now. You've got a freedom where you can choose your own path. And Palisa, for you, was the goal always to take over as a restaurateur and as a producer, or did you have another path in mind?
Look, I think as we all grow older, I think we're all very similar in age. I find that, of course, with natural changes, we become more fluid and adaptable. And I think I was listening to something with Ruby Wax today about how, she said Darwin was really misinterpreted in the whole idea of survival of the fittest. And I think she said that, what Darwin meant by fittest didn't necessarily mean the strongest, but the most resilient. And I think that in foods, especially now, is really important that we are, that we maintain our resilience and our adaptability, because, who knew this was how 2020 was going to turn out.
Totally.
And we just have to keep adjusting as we go, and finding and being open to opportunities. I think that's really has been the key thing for me, and kind of like, not to sound too mystical, but to read the signs in what the world's kind of like throwing at you and where that path needs to go. But I think for me, with growing produce for our restaurants. It was a natural progression. And partially, you know, that's what the show's kind of about. Like, all my life I've been kind of immersed in the food world in some way or another with, you know, my mother's restaurants. And that led to wanting to find out where the food source came from. And as you do that deep dive, you become really unsettled about and really not quite accepting anymore. And so that's when you kind of like veer towards becoming the producer. And I think a lot of people take that path. The longer you are in it, I think it's just a natural progression. And then from that progression, then you start to look around you as well and see, okay, what else can be better? What else can we have a hand in to change people's consumption, like people's consumptive habits, just to kind of open people's minds up and just take them out of that numb state. And I think, if anything, 2020 has done that naturally to everybody. And, you know, just that whole craze with, you know, putting your hands in food again, making sourdough, making food from scratch, like that's reconnected us. And hopefully that, again, on a broader scale, will take people back to more the produce as well, because it all leads to the soil. That's the origin of everything. And that's why, you know, my moniker on Instagram, actually, Mitch was the one who, Mitch and Pat Nurse were the two people that talked me into getting an Instagram handle. I think right from the beginning, my Instagram handle was, it was making topsoil. I think that was really interesting right from the beginning to me, even before I had a farm. That was what I was really kind of really immersed in, because topsoil is pretty much the key to a lot of reversing climate change, the way we eat, and really kind of bring that deep dive.
And for consumers at home, or, you know, for the everyday punter that's watching this and wanting, you know, really resonating with what you're saying and wanting to do their part, what are some of the habits that we can all change to, you know, do things better and to help the topsoil and help regenerate the earth?
Well, you know, the very common basic things, I guess, is doing as much as you can to buy from your local growers as close to the source as possible, and identify who those growers are that is kind of growing with land regenerative practices, not just willy-nilly. Like, you know, there are a lot of farmers out there who I think want to convert, but find that whole treadwheel of having to make a living. That's the hardest bit, I think. Find really, you know, if you're going to eat meat, make sure you're buying from good sources. Make sure that you work with farmers and talk to them. Go out and inspect the farms. Ask them to have a look at the, you know, see if you can go on a farm tour or whatever, and learn, you know, really learn. And I think a lot of people with us, you know, a lot of young people are now coming back to land, which is really wonderful. And if you've wanted to ever make that change, like, this is a really good year for it, I think. I'm seeing a lot of that around this area, and it's great. You know, a lot of people resist change, especially, you know, the older generation, the older community. But saying that, you know, if there are young people wanting to take up, you know, the tools again, it's the best time for buy less, buy better, buy less. We like this, if anything, this year's really taught us that we can really do with a lot less than we have. We've already got plenty.
And Mitch, I heard you, you know, I saw your eyebrows raise when Palisa mentioned, you know, if you're eating meat, you know, buy good meat. I noticed that you chose to make this a vegetarian dish. Are you eating less meat at home? Are you, you know, upping the veg? What are you up to?
I don't generally eat much meat. I try not to, and when I do, I try and make sure it's, you know, really ethical meat, and I try and eat a lot of secondary cuts and that kind of thing as well. You know, always conscious of that kind of thing. But I think in my cooking's always been mostly vegetable-based cooking. You know, the menu at Acme was always like 85% vegetables. So, you know, I think that's just a natural thing. But I think seasonality is really important as well. There's no point not eating meat, but then eating vegetables that are flown 20,000 miles to get here. You know what I mean? When they're not in season in Australia, that kind of doesn't make sense to me. So definitely just eat more ethically and more sensibly and more seasonably, I think,
And
is the
a
way.
little bit less, I think. I mean, I'm not kind of like putting out the banner for austerity, but I think we could all probably do with just having enough.
Well, I think the thing about eating nutritious food, though, is you don't tend to need to eat as much of it to feel satisfied as well, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Like,
it's also really, it's also a really complicated thing because a lot of it's tied up in socioeconomic problems and all that kind of stuff. Not everyone has access to the same things, so you also need to be conscious of all of that.
Totally.
Which, there are a lot of food deserts around a lot of suburban areas, for instance. That's why I would also advocate to grow as much as you can yourself. Have that immigrant mindset. Like, I've rewritten my bio, actually, and the first line of my new bio says, Palisa is an immigrant lifer. And I will forever take that to the grave with me, because I think that used to be had so many negative connotations. And now, if we can flip that and just think, actually, the immigrants had it right. They were the ones that were growing their own food, that were putting the fruit trees in front of their front yards and backyards, and, growing food on their verges. And it's become, very hip recently. But, this was a subsistence way of living and eating. And if we could all go back to that, I think we'd buy a lot less and we'd probably grow a lot more for our own consumption.
And you've got a book coming out that I've pre-ordered through Some Kind Press on growing. So if you are watching this and this is resonating for you, then do check out Some Kind Press and pre-order Palisa's book. When can we expect to see that book, Palisa? I saw the manuscript flicking through. It's coming soon.
Yeah, it's super exciting. It's coming. It's going to the printers. Actually, it's being printed right as we speak.
Awesome.
And it's still for sale. What I love about Some Kind is they're very intentional. The only copies that get printed are the ones that are already sold. It's very accessible to everyone. It's $20. There'll be an excerpt of it actually in the paper this week, in the Guardian, in the lifestyle column. So, awesome. It's an easy read. You can sit down and read the thing back, front to back in less than an hour. It's just hopefully it will just kind of inspire people to get out there and just put their hands in the soil.
That's brilliant. And we've come to the audience participation part of this conversation. So I'm going to go to some questions that we had sent in advance. If you are enjoying this and if you're thinking, I'd love to ask some really amazing chefs some questions, do keep an eye out and do send your questions in for our next parts of our series. But the first question is, back to the panna cotta. So, Palisa, what is your top tip for getting that panna cotta wobble?
Mitch is going to roll his eyes because he said to me that I put too much gelatin in, and yet it was still pretty soft, wasn't it? Well, test your gelatin, because each brand will have a slightly, I think, different level of strength to it. I think my recipe was for 2.5 leaves. I think, was it 3.5? Anyway, so if you feel that's too firm, reduce the amount. Otherwise, don't set it on a boil. Just heat it up to just at the point of boil to melt your gelatin and put it in. Don't cook it, overcook it, because that actually might put you back ground zero, actually, and it might not set, and that's the thing. But it can also set too hard. So but my top tip actually for the panna cotta is actually to put your vanilla seeds right at the end, because if you cook the vanilla, you actually lose a lot of the essence. With the seeds, because think of it, it's an aromat, it's got oils, and the more you heat up the oils, the more volatile it becomes.
That flies in the face of everything that we've ever been taught, right? About steeping.
Well, but the thing is, steeping yes, cooking no.
Gotcha. So not too high a heat, like truffles, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just warming it through so that it's just gonna kind of melt the gelatin, and then put the seeds in.
Love it. And then when in doubt, just set it in a glass. And you don't have to worry about the level.
If you're going to, if you were going to eat this at Mitch's restaurant, it will be a free a free scoop.
Good. I love that.
But not a quenelle. Mitch, never quenelle, right, Mitch?
Are you off quenelles? Quenelles are done.
Also, it's impossible to quenelle a panna cotta anyway.
Very true. Yeah.
Oh no,
totally.
I like free form. Just natural. The
organic
natural.
Organic. Yeah. Well, speaking of quenelles and free-form desserts, Mitch, do you have a favourite that you like to cook at home?
I actually hate making dessert because I don't have the patience for weighing and measuring and proper processes and all that kind of stuff. I'm more of a put this much in and taste it and feel and just let it do its thing kind of thing. But that's why we had ice cream. Like every dessert at Acme was ice cream based, because you just make a big base and then it's done kind of thing. But in saying that, tiramisu is my favorite dessert, even though I don't drink coffee and I generally hate cream in everything. But tiramisu is my favorite dessert, and it's really pretty simple to make, and it's pretty fun to make. So if I make anything at home, that's usually what I make.
Therein lies
who taught you?
True nature, the contrarian.
Yeah, big time. It's like, I don't like it, but I love to make it. So who taught you how to make tiramisu? Was it Giovanni or was it Massimo Bottura?
No, definitely not. Wasn't. No. I first learned probably from Danny Russo and Giovanni, but the recipe I actually really love to use is the recipe from 10 William Street and Fratelli Paradiso that the Paradiso boys and Marco taught me.
Is it Marco's? So is that Marco's mum, right? It's the best.
I'm not sure if it's Marco's mum. Gio and Henry's dad's recipe. I'm not sure.
And is that available online?
A version of it's actually on my Instagram. When I was through the first lockdown in Sydney, I was doing little step-by-step things. So tiramisu is actually on.
Better yet, go to 10 William Street. Go to Fratelli Paradiso.
Yeah, go and eat it.
Yeah.
They still make it better than I can make it, that's for sure.
That's awesome. We actually had Trisha on for the last episode. So if you want to hear more about what's happening at 10 William Street, then check out the last episode on the Taste Dining at Home website. So there you go. But if you want to check out how to cook that tiramisu, Instakrill is who you're looking for on Instagram, and you can check it out there. Next question is for you, Palisa. What is your favourite sauce to cook in the kitchen?
My favourite sauce, would that be one that I made myself or one that's a store-bought one?
You can take that question as you like.
My favourite sauce is probably actually a combination. So the one that I make myself is a combination sauce and oil. How about that? So basically I take, if I'm confying something, I take the oil and use that to render either garlic or shallots. And then that can be taken to make an XO base, which just gives it even more kind of amped up flavor. And then you can actually, when you render, after you've taken the confit away, you can render your garlic and your shallots, and you can fry it up and take that out. And then you've got all those flavors to then make your XO base. And then you've got the garlic or the shallots or whatever. I would never do them at the same time, but then you've got your garlic to either put on top of like your noodles, your crisp kind of garlic, or your crisp shallots to put on your top of your noodles, your salads, your larb, whatever. And then that oil then gets taken to make the XO sauce, which then you can make, Mitch's noodles with. So that's my favorite. So you can, that's just a permanent staple. We have that at the restaurant as well. And my favorite store-bought sauce, gosh, it's going to have to be a run in between this favorite fish sauce I've got from Thailand, which is basically it's fermented in pineapple. It's a river fish fermented in pineapple. It's delicious, and it's not sweet. It's actually just got a really well-rounded balance. And the other one is a Japanese ponzu. No, it's not a ponzu. Sorry, it's dashi shoyu. So it's actually a soy sauce with a dashi combined already, and that's just like ready to go, and you can knock up so many things with that.
That sounds delicious. Can we buy those store-bought sauces at your grocery store in Sydney?
Used to, but nobody bought it. So we stopped.
Well, you've just created the demand. Now's the time. Start.
I might.
You know, to run on it.
But you can actually get it from Fino Foods. Yeah. So dashi shoyu from Jozo Yomaki, which is an organic producer from Japan.
Awesome. Thank you. We're going to search those online. Now, the next one. So I reckon we've talked about this question, so we might go to the next one. It's about XO. So here we go. Okay, this is for both of you. What is your favourite guilty pleasure to eat? We'll go to you first, Mitch.
It's probably flies in the face of a lot of what we talked about, but it's probably using from KFC.
Oh, wow. Does that take you back to the western suburbs?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't really eat any other fast food, but yeah, there's something about the Zinger burger that is pretty unbeatable.
I love it. Was that like an after-school thing you used to go with your mates to?
I think maybe it's that I was never allowed, like we weren't allowed to eat Macca's or anything when we were younger, and then being a teenager, yeah, I think when a KFC finally opened in Toongabbie, we were like pretty much there every couple of days. So maybe it does tie into that actually, yeah.
Always ties into that. Palisa, is that the same for you? Something from your childhood
KFC?
or
No.
Something more recent?
I love, which I learnt to make. I nailed this during actually lockdown when I was in Thailand with my mom. I love kanom mokgang, which is a baked custard. And rather than using cream, it's actually using fresh coconut cream. You make the fresh coconut cream, and it's basically, it sounds so strange, but it's actually got taro in it. So you use a starch to kind of like weigh it down, and then you've got this kind of top layer of this beautiful custard, like it's an egg yolk custard, and it's made like with the aromats with pandan that you kind of just like wash the custard. It's a very interesting method. I've never and it doesn't require any mixes or anything to make. You actually beat it by scrunching the pandan into the milk and the egg to make the custard, and then you scramble the custard in a kind of a shallow pan with a taro, and then you bake it between coals. So you actually bake it between smouldering coals, and then to dress it, you put shallots, fried shallots on top of it. It's the weirdest sounding combination. It is so out there, but it's like the most delicious thing in the world.
That sounds like the salty, sweet, savory, creamy. Mitch, are you thinking that you might change your answer?
No, coconut cream is good. Dairy cream I don't like, but coconut cream desserts I'm down with.
Love it. Yeah,
it doesn't make me feel. Yeah, it's quite. And it's made with palm sugar rather than sugar as well. So it's a coconut sugar based. We sell it at Chat Thai actually currently, and it's sold in the little kind of squares. Yeah, delicious.
Brilliant. Well, that is a perfect place to end this, because the whole point of the Taste Dining at Home series is to encourage you to head out to your favourite restaurants, to your favourite producers and providores, and get back in touch with some of this delicious food. So if that dessert sounded like something up your alley, or even if it sounded challenging, go out and check it out. And Mitch, we can't wait to see what other step-by-steps you put up on Instagrill and see what it is that you choose to do next with your career. Because, you know, if there's one thing that we've learnt about both of you, it's that you are and continue to be rising stars, and, you know, the sky's the limit. So thank you so much for your time. And, you know, we learnt so much. It was just absolutely insightful and inspiring. And I think we can all come away feeling like we've spent the last however long living our best lives. So thank you very much. And thank you all for tuning in as well. This has been such a fantastic episode of the Taste Dining at Home series presented by Diners Club. Big ups to Diners Club for sponsoring the thing and keeping us running. And big ups to you for tuning in. And make sure that you tune in to the next one. We've got plenty more fantastic guests ahead. So I look forward to seeing you. And until then, take care and keep on supporting producers and chefs like these two.